When Charlotte Area Fund is starting in 1963-64, Charlotte is a city that's much smaller than it is today, but it was already the biggest city in North Carolina. It was a city that had a glistening new skyline. It was a city that had quietly serious problems with poverty.
When they asked me to join, I believed in the mission of Charlotte Area Fund. I always say my passion is for those who don't have a voice that needs someone to advocate for them.
And those problems have not gone away. So the Area Fund continues work that was started way back in the 1960s.
And I felt that was, for me, the families that Charlotte Area Fund served, those were the ones that I needed to be out here advocating for.
Well, Charlotte Area Fund has been in the community for as long as I can remember. I'm a native Charlottean growing up in Charlotte, so I was aware of the Charlotte Area Fund prior to graduating from high school. But my interaction with the Charlotte Area Fund is multiple.
Early 60s was a time of discovery for the United States. This had been a country that thought of itself as incredibly wealthy, leader of the free world, and all of that was true, but there was poverty under the surface.
Of course, you know, we lived in a segregated world within this city, segregated school-wise, segregated housing-wise, and resources available to black families.
So the Area Fund had to overcome institutional racism. It had to advocate for residents who had been left out of the mainstream because of the society's structures.
The work of people like Dr. King, Rosa Parks with the Montgomery bus boycott, all of that showed us that there were people who were not getting the full benefit of America's prosperity.
They set the trend in terms of making sure that people in the community had access to relevant resources so that they could be successful citizens here in Mecklenburg County.
One of the things that I can see is organizations or agencies such as Charlotte Area Fund, how they have made a difference to step in, because some of those families and some of those people back in the 60s, we still saw some of that poverty going on in 2000s.
One of the geniuses of this period is understanding that help not only comes from outside, but it comes from people inside. You can't just impose solutions on problems from outside. And the whole idea behind the North Carolina Fund, and particularly the Area Fund, was to work in the area with the people who are on the ground. What do they think is needed? What solutions do they see to harness the energy of youth?
The economy is evolving, and the skill sets are not always available for some of the residents in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And one of the pieces that the Area Fund is still engaged in is job training, making sure that the work that's available here in the community is accessible for regular citizens.
Early on in the 60s, the equal opportunity legislation said that firms had to be open in their hiring, but somebody still had to be trained up with the necessary skills and be able to walk through that door. And here in Charlotte, folks like James Ross and Elo Henderson were working on the ground. The Area Fund partnered with them, worked to make sure that they didn't get in each other's way. And that notion of job training, and particularly of the neighboring with the hiring corporations.
When I first came on, we didn't have those kinds of partnerships. So those are partnerships now that have been developed across the city, which means that means it's more resources, more opportunities that are available for those, the families that we serve.
So I see that evolution even today as relates to training in terms of job skills. They're not training you to get minimum wage jobs. They're training individuals now for living wage jobs, jobs that people can pay market rate rent, are able to buy homes, etc.
Young people, unless you're energized to learn the roots of a problem, you can't tackle the problem. And that energy requires passion, it requires smarts, and it requires listening and partnering. And those are things that Charlotte Area Fund has been doing for a long time. Using that energy, making yourself part of that energy is a way forward.
Charlotte Area Fund will be on the forefront of advocacy, of making a difference. Charlotte and major urban cities across the country have a bimodal population where some people are doing very well and others are not doing as well. The Area Fund is going to shine a light, a big spotlight on where the needs are. And what I see in the future for the Charlotte Area Fund is its continued forefront of advocacy, of letting us know where those needs are so that we can bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots.